How much do relationships affect your health?
Today, we talked to Maren and Simon Mittal, couples coaches who help couples build relationships they are happy to be in, and how this impacts health and weight.
As a health coach and a wellness coach, we ask the questions so you get the answers. Let's get started as we ask.
Wait, what? Hi.
So we want to ask you a question right off the bat.
Right off the bat.
Okay.
Go for it.
What is the relationship between a bad relationship and weight?
Weight gain specifically, but not just saying in general.
So I think there are lots of ways to answer that question. So I think it partly depends on where you're at in your relationship. And when you have let's say a struggling relationship, it can go one of two ways, right? It can either be full of anxiety and now you're not eating, or it can be full of stress and you're stress eating. And either way, it can cause either significant weight gain or weight loss. What we see more commonly is the weight gain because of the stress within the relationship.
So wait, you just made me think of something. When I'm stressed in general in life, I eat. So would that be the same, like generally speaking, if you're when you're stressed, you don't eat, the same would happen in your relationships and vice versa? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say yes, because it's
Yeah.
our nervous system that's responding.
Okay.
And it's responding to these uncertainties about relationship. And when you have relationships that aren't, maybe they don't have a strong base, then there's uncertainty. And when we see that uncertainty, it can lead to anxiety, or it can lead to the stressful side of things. It can either be a positive stress or a negative stress. And either way, it is going to affect not only how you eat, but really your health in general.
Wow.
So many
Deep.
questions
Okay.
there.
All right. Go ahead. We didn't even say who we're talking to. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, before we get into, because I'm going to need a follow-up question for that, I want to give your intro a little bit. With more than 30 years of combined experience in clinical leadership, mental health, and couples coaching, Maren and Dr. Simon Mittal help coaches build stronger, healthier relationships. Maren and LICSW brings a compassionate, holistic approach to personal growth, while Dr. Simon Mittal, a physician executive in behavioral health, offers strategic insight and practical solutions. Together, they founded SMM Coaching and Consulting, where they combine evidence-based coaching with actionable tools to help couples improve communication, navigate conflict, and reconnect with the relationship they want to create.
Wow.
That's a mouthful.
I want to get to know those
I
people.
know.
That's awesome.
I have so many questions on just that alone, but let's follow up with what we were talking about before I ping pong all over.
So you were talking about the impact on health.
Right.
So I want to follow up a little bit about that in a high level and then get into the specifics of if that can be changed.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what we do know is stress in general leads to worse health outcomes, increased cardiac disease, cancer, diabetes. I mean, just a whole list of chronic diseases that are associated with increased stress. What we know in relationships is that actually gets heightened, that those kinds of risks for overall health worsen. And if you think about it, the relationships you have in your life, the ones that are the most meaningful. When they're great, they're awesome. But when they're not great, how do you feel? And you don't feel motivated to do anything that's healthy. You don't feel like you want to, your motivation just goes away. And when that happens, it goes away across the board to the point that people develop almost a cynical attitude to their life. And we know that cynicism, negativity, stress all contribute to these really poor health outcomes.
I know we're talking about like a partner relationship, but does this apply to other relationships as well?
I would say absolutely. We were just talking before we jumped on here that people tend to think like, oh, I can compartmentalize my relationships and still go to work and be fine. Or, like it doesn't really affect the other parts of my life. That is totally not true.
Really?
Relationships impact every part of who we are, how we show up.
Okay, so wait. What if I have a bad relationship with like a family member? Does that show up everywhere? I mean, I'm not just talking about spouse. It's showing up. Really?
It can definitely show up everywhere. And again, depending on the types of relationships you have, if you have, say, a challenging relationship with your dad. And you think about all the things that you wish were different about that relationship. Well, you bring all of those wishes into every other relationship, whether it's controllable or not. Maybe you wanted to get some affirmation. Maybe you wanted to get a sense of, I have value or I have worth. I mean, you'll bring those things into almost all your relationships if that's one relationship, which is a close relationship, will impact then the rest of your relationship, including your work relationships.
Wow. Okay, so how do you not? Like, sometimes you just can't cut ties with certain people. Like, how do
Mhm.
I not bring it into my relationship with my
Good
kids or
question.
my husband? Or how do I not bring something like that?
Mhm. Yeah, I was just thinking it's hopeful because there are actually real tools that we can do. And one way that we define it is internal boundary setting. Internal. So boundaries, we know that's kind of a buzzword. It's like if we say, "Hey, do you want to meet me for coffee?" We can say yes or we can say no. That's external.
Okay.
Internal boundary setting is more around where do I put my focus? Where do I put my energy? How much time do I spend thinking about this situation? How do I take care of myself when I am noticing a lot of activation in a certain
Mm.
relationship so that it's not coming out sideways? How do I do good self emotional care?
And I think the other part of that we talk a lot about is people want to feel seen, heard, and valued. That's the core of what people really want. They want to feel seen, they want to be heard, and they want to feel valued. But they also have to do that for themselves, right? So it's not like you can do that just externally. I can't pull on Maren to give me all of that. I have to feel like I'm worthy myself. I have to hear myself. I have to see myself for who I really am. I can't just expect external people to do that for me. So we talk a lot about the tools that are useful to be able to do that.
Well, okay, so what if only one partner has the seen, heard, and valued thoughts? Like, do you know what I don't like. I'm just saying this for in general. Like, what if I see myself, hear myself, and value myself, but my partner doesn't? And there's
Yeah.
that imbalance. What happens then?
hmm Well, I think what happens is that's where stress comes in.
Mm.
One way to address that is to develop skills on how to do repair, how to
Mhm.
bridge the gap. So it is often the case in closer relationships where we're in two different places. I think about things very differently than my partner does. So, how do we get the skills in order to build a bridge and say we can create a win win situation?
Rather than saying, I'm right and you're wrong. Because I think oftentimes what happens in relationships, we look at it through our own perspective and we say, well, it's very clear to me that I'm right.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right. And so,
Yeah,
right.
I
And,
mean,
and so
I'm always right.
yeah, right,
No.
right. And so one of the skills we try to teach is how do you take perspectives? How do you perspective take in a different way so that I can be okay with me and my point of view, but I'm also open to seeing the other point of view and valuing it even when I don't necessarily agree with it. And so that actually helps build trust, which is the other foundation that is so critically important in these relationships. And it actually relates back to what you were talking about in terms of weight. When we don't trust ourselves or we don't trust other people, we tend to have other ways of coping and building that maybe in a more false way by saying, okay, I'm going to eat. I'm going to drink. I'm going to do whatever activity to find my own sense of worth rather than building trust with myself or building trust with um, in a vulnerable way with other people. And vulnerability is very difficult for people.
Okay, so let's bring this into the real world because I think
Sure.
we're speaking in a more uh, academic way, and I want to talk about a real way. If you have two people, let's just take a married couple. I mean, I know this extrapolates to all relationships, but let's just take a married couple or a partnership. And these two people initially, the reason they got together, they were excitement or whatever, but then they started to bicker and fight. And it has escalated to all the communication is just fighting and talking past each other and a lot of
Mhm.
finger pointing and you don't understand me, you don't see me. What is initially, how does that impact our health? And then I would like to follow that up with, what are we supposed to do?
Mhm.
Because if you're one person, like the one partner wants to resolve and the other partner's like, well, I give up. It's just hopeless.
Absolutely.
So
Mhm.
how does that show up in our health initially?
So I think, it's interesting because there's such different phases within the course of a
Mhm.
relationship, right? So the initial phase when we're sort of falling in love,
Mhm.
right? Or where the relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship or not, doesn't matter, but it's exciting in some way, right? There's
Right.
some joy that you kind of get from the relationship. And so you're basically, what happens is it's like going to get some ice cream and you're like, oh, I love ice cream. Or it's like going and doing something that you really, really enjoy. Like, I enjoy skydiving. So when I go
Oh,
skydiving, oh, come on, guys, you like skydiving? I'm sure.
I know.
I mean, by the way you said it, like it's a hobby, like you do it frequently.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to do a lot more than I had done it. But so
Okay, go on.
so when I do that, I have this excitement, this thrill, and guess what? I don't get hungry then. I don't
Right.
eat because I'm so excited. Now, that's different from being stressed, right? Because when we're stressed, like if I go to that event, same thing, and I'm not excited, but I'm afraid, I'm going to have a
Right.
very, very different response to that than if I'm excited. And so think about that in terms of relationships. It's the same thing, right? If this is a safe relationship, I'm going to be very different than if I'm afraid of the relationship or it doesn't feel certain or doesn't feel safe in some way. I'm going to respond to that very, very differently. So if you're in a relationship and you feel like it started off in this wonderful place, look back, how was your eating like then? Right? Your eating probably wasn't, you were probably weren't eating consistently or kind of on a regular basis. And then as you kind of get into this relationship, you kind of find this place initially where it's like, oh, I'm so glad we're together. And we try to kind of motivate each other and we try to eat healthy together and we try to exercise together. We try to do all those things. And then all of a sudden you get to this place where you're bickering, right? Now it doesn't feel as
Mhm.
safe. Now you're
Mhm.
off doing your own thing. One person might be eating a lot. One person might be not eating at all. It all depends on kind of their background and how they've managed their own emotional state in the past. And so it will have significant impact on weight. And if that stress is long term, that's when we get the negative health outcomes.
Mhm.
That's when we start to see, you know, early onset heart disease, early onset diabetes, or earlier onset of cancers. I mean, depression, anxiety, which then
Oh,
confounds the
yeah.
problem and actually enhances those risks even more.
It's
So
like putting kindling on a fire.
absolutely. That's a great picture. It really is. And so I think what ends up happening oftentimes, and I think what we see is oftentimes people kind of say, well, this is normal to bicker in a relationship,
Mhm.
rather than saying, I wonder if there's something different I can do because this is a healthy choice for me. This is a healthy choice for us. And can we actually make a decision to do something different?
I gotta soak that in. Go.
So well, I have a couple of questions for you, but you can decide which way to go. I would like to know, if that couple comes to you as couples coaches, what do you do and what do you teach them? And then as a follow-up, I want to know how you came to couples coaching, because
Oh,
I
good
think that's
question.
also really interesting.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of practical things you can do, but I'm going to start with the simplest that anybody can implement. And you can implement this in any relationship is notice and name. And what we're noticing is in our relationship with ourselves. So I'm going to pause and notice, what am I feeling right now? What am I thinking right now? What is my body telling me right now? And then I'm going to try to put a word to it. Like, I'm actually feeling disrespected, or I'm feeling sad. So, like, literally naming it, that's bringing certainty to our brains. So we feel more empowered, we feel more capable.
Mhm.
And then when we can do that in our relationship with ourselves, then we can bring that into the relationship that has the stress. As we take away blame, we can say, instead of you're making me mad, I could say, when this happened, I feel really disrespected. How could we address this together to change the dynamic?
And think about, I love what you just described, because I think part of what happens in that is we're trying to help people expand their emotional language. Because oftentimes if somebody asks you, "How are you today?" You're probably going to say, "Good,
Good.
okay, or
Fine.
fine," right? You're going to say
Yeah.
something that's a one-word answer. And if you really sat down and you ask yourself, "Well, what does that really mean?" It really means I don't really want to have a conversation.
Hmm.
Mm.
Not that I really want to have a conversation or relationship, because you're really just saying what those one word answers we give when we're asked that question is really an arm's length kind of answer. It's like, yeah, I don't want to get too close in this relationship. Now, there's some relationships
Hmm.
that might be the case, but
Can I interrupt you for 1 second, though?
yeah, please.
If a person says, "I'm fine," isn't that usually, well, not always, but sometimes doesn't it mean, I don't know if I can trust you to even give you a real answer?
I think that definitely is one situation. I think another one is if we look at our relationship with ourselves, we might not know. We might not have a clue any other answer.
I mean, think about when,
Mm.
I can think of times when I've been asked that question. And if I was really to sit and pause and ask myself, how am I doing? Now I have a decision to make. Is this a person I want to share that with or not? And how much do I want to share?
Mhm.
And so there are certain people I probably wouldn't share, right? But if Maren asked me that, I really do want to pause and say, how am I actually doing? What's actually inside of me? And I want to share that. So depending on the relationship you're in, you do get to make some decisions around. But the more we are thoughtful about that, especially in more intimate relationships, the more trust gets built because we're actually being more vulnerable.
Okay, so I want to use a real world example, like for real. And my husband might get mad, but whatever. I call him on my way home from work, and I'm like, "How's your day?" Is that the same type of question as "How are you?" Okay, so when I say, "How's your day?" and he's like, "Good," does that mean? I mean, you obviously can't answer it, but you're saying that either he doesn't want to acknowledge it himself and figure out himself what's going on, or he doesn't trust me to tell me more details, or am I off
I,
base on both?
I think those could be. I think,
Okay,
there's other possibilities. Maybe he's distracted because the notice and name includes taking a pause and checking in with ourselves first. So you're checking in with him, but if he's, in the middle of watching his
right,
TV show or something,
right.
it's that's why our relationship with ourselves really is foundational.
It is. Yeah, very much so.
Do
So I
you
think
think that sorry to interrupt you again,
go
but
ahead.
do
No,
you
go ahead.
think that this is sort of a side tangent from this question, but if in my generation, Leah's a little bit younger than me, but if I was raised as be seen and not heard as a child, and I think many people from my generation are, you just be quiet and do what you're supposed to do and don't speak up. And we've translated that into an adult of, I don't need to offer very much because no one's going to be listening. How does that impact then relationships?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, I would say it impacts the level of intimacy that we can build. I like to say intimacy is into me, you see.
Oh, okay. I like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think also, I mean, I'm here sitting thinking about that question because it's a really interesting question. I think it's a deep question because when we are brought up in our certain cultures, certain parenting, certain age, right, whatever that looks like, we're bringing a lot of that forward into our
Mhm.
current state. And so one of the things that we actually do in coaching is have people pause and ask, what was your relationship like as a child? Were you allowed to have an opinion or a voice? Were you allowed to express emotion? I mean, I grew up in a family where emotion really wasn't seen. You don't express emotion.
Mhm.
And so because of that, growing up now and trying to be an adult, and trying to figure that out is challenging. And that's where coaching can really be helpful of saying it's okay to express your emotion. There are positive ways of doing that, even if it's difficult emotion. And I think that, I know for me, not being able to share emotion. I think I was very much in a place of I wasn't very healthy. I would eat crap all the time. I felt like I had to always prove myself. So there was always a facade of being healthy, even though I wasn't. There was, almost I'm going to prove to you that I'm a healthy person when I'm not, really. And so I think there are lots of pieces, and that's just one area of life, but that I think is one of the areas that it can really impact.
Hmm.
So if a couple comes to you with all their history and all their baggage and their pattern of bickering and fighting or missing each other, whatever their patterns are, is there hope for them?
Absolutely.
Yes, there is. One of the things we tell people often is what we as human beings are actually learners, and you can learn new skills and you can gain capacity for new emotional interactions and relationships.
Hmm.
We are very, very hopeful for that. And we've seen that. The couples we've worked with have seen that actually be real for them. Because now, again, you have to have a motivation for change, right? You still have to
Mhm.
be motivated toward change. But if you're motivated toward it and you're open to it, absolutely there is hope.
Mm. That's an interesting distinguishing part. You both have to be open to it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And, and I think most people can learn new skills.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we do in our coaching is teach people skills, have them practice it. How did it go?
And
Hmm.
sometimes we have them practice in front of us
Mhm.
so that we can coach them actually in the middle of that kind of conversation and really talk through what's actually going on here. What's actually
Hmm.
going on in the midst of the conversation. Because I think, again, it's in one way it's more complex than they think, but it's actually simpler than they think as well. And so we're
Okay.
trying to sort of tease it apart and saying, so what are you actually trying to say here?
Right.
Right? Because what you're trying to say is actually more basic than what you're actually describing. Because we
Mhm.
tend to describe at a factual level, not at an emotional level. And our emotions are actually much more powerful in terms of connection than the facts are. We'd love to come back and help and maybe go through some of those questions again. So
Oh
we'd
my
love to do that.
gosh.
We would love
Yeah,
that.
that would be awesome. Thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. All the information provided is meant for education and entertainment purposes only. Please consult your physician before making any changes.
If you liked this episode, please give us a 5-star review. Also, share this episode with someone who you think would enjoy it. If you have topics you want us to investigate, please message us. Thanks.